What's going on, Aces? Welcome back to the channel. I hope that you guys are having a lovely Monday evening. Let's get into this Real Housewives of Atlanta recap. Let's be honest. And to be honest, I appreciate the title. I do feel like, we're getting to the thick of the season. And it starts out with Angela and Charles Oakley. When I tell y'all that Charles is honest, okay, almost to a fault. So they go out to dinner, they're sitting outside, it's nice, and they order drinks and everything. And Angela and him are talking, and I mean, she's just basically like, I don't want to say begging, but she's trying to be playful and have a banter with him. And Charles is just like, I'm wondering why he even married her, because he just seems so uninterested and so dismissive of everything that she says. Like, she has a smile on her face, and even in the confessionals with the producers, she's like, oh well, they ask Charles, do you love Angela? And he's like, I mean, uh like, next question. And she's like, I'm trying to give you an out. And he's like, what? What do you mean give me an out? Give me an out for what? Like, he's just so uninterested, you know? She leans over, she's like, give me a kiss. And he's like, what? A kiss? Like, that's what you're supposed to do as a husband, Charles. You are her husband. This is your wife. But I don't understand why they're married if he just seems so disinterested. Like, the men in this season, with the exception of Gerald, who is, wise enough, in my opinion, to largely stay, out of filming. But Britt Eadie's husband, disinterested. Charles Oakley, disinterested. Simon Gubadia, he's locked away in ICE, but he was also very disinterested. Ralph, down in the basement, disinterested. I mean, it's like, oh my goodness. But anyway, so Charles is just really paying Angela dust. But one thing I can say about him is he is very honest. Let's move on. So Cynthia is trying to be the peacemaker between Porsha and Shemea, and they've been going back and forth for quite some time. I feel like ever since Shemea, married and found her husband, that Porsha has just been really jealous. I mean, I just have to be honest. Like, that face, that's why I chose this picture. It's just giving, again, disinterested. No, but she's just really upset. I feel like because Shemea is living the life that she thought that she was supposed to live. So Angela, again, in my opinion, she is the very messy bone collector in this season. But I feel like you need one of those every season, just to kind of keep the storylines moving forward. But Cynthia, Cynthia's doing what she always does. She's sitting down with Shemea, and Shemea's just saying that, when she would say something, that it will be taken back to Porsha, and her words will be twisted. She says that she doesn't feel supported by Porsha, and Cynthia, in her confessional, she compares their relationship to her and Nene, and she's sharing with that, like, it's hard to be someone's friend who is essentially jealous of you, or just has so many deep rooted insecurities that they're unable to be supportive in the way that you need them to. And I agree with Cynthia. I feel like she was always a much better friend to Nene than, Nene was to her. But I feel like Porsha, you know, she self sabotages a lot. And even, the situation, the show that she was supposed to film on, with Nene, the Upshaws, right, with Kim Fields and Mike Epps on Netflix. Porsha made, a huge issue about not wanting to film with Nene, and eventually Cynthia, again, as Nene's friend, stepped in when she needed her. But yeah, it's unfortunate because I do feel like Shemea has been a much better friend to Porsha than Porsha has been to Shemea. And maybe that's why, she was blessed with, such a supportive husband and, who's wealthy and um, just really loves her. And, because I feel like, again, you guys have heard me say this thousands of times, but when you put good things out, good things will come back to you, even if it doesn't come from the person that you may think or may want it to come from. Maybe Portia just does not have the bandwidth to be the friend that Shemea needs. It's unfortunate, but and then she said, I'm up for grabs. She tells Cynthia, I'm up for grabs if you want to take me in. I do feel like her and Cynthia have a lot of similar characteristics in that way, that they are both supportive friends to um and I don't want to call Nene or Portia like narcissistic, but maybe they're a bit more self-involved than Shemea and Cynthia. Shemea is a really good supportive, friend. She's always a listening ear. She's always there at her events. And when it's not reciprocated, it is very hurtful. You know, Cynthia is the same way with Nene. She's already been on her show. I'll have to recap that at another time, but she's already been on her YouTube show. Like Cynthia will always be there for Nene when she needs her, and I don't feel like Nene gives her the same support. I will say this though, this is a lesson, when I watch the dynamics, like go where you are valued, go where you are loved and supported, and make sure that support is reciprocated, because if it's not, it's just going to be, draining on you. So, the next scene, Shemea does have her friends who are there, in the studio with her and supporting her. And, that's not Porsha. So that's good. And then Kelly is at her restaurant. The chicken and waffles look amazing. Next time I'm in Atlanta, I definitely want to, support her and check her restaurant out. Because I went to Gladys Knight's. I think her restaurant was also chicken and waffles, and it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't bad, but I ended up giving most of it away to my cousin. But Shemea's sister, Tawana's there with her, and she says that she feels like she's really the only one working on that relationship. Again, anything that's one sided like that will just like drain you almost. But Cynthia and Kelly, or Cynthia, Angela, and Portia, they go bowling, and Cynthia's a pretty good bowler, right? But yeah, so they're talking about Portia's jumpsuit, which is cute. One thing I can say about Portia, she's always fly. She always dresses very nice. But it reminds me of the Aretha Franklin quote when she's like gowns, beautiful gowns. Like there's not a lot of substance there. It's just kind of surface. That's what Portia gives. But anyway, they have fun bowling. Angela says they did want the little bumpers, but they ended up not doing that. Like the kid bumpers, so that there won't be any gutter balls. It's hilarious. And then Angela says, don't give me any old balls. And she's like, no, you like old balls. And I'm thinking, Portia, girl, you got to stop. Talking about this woman's husband, talking about any type of old balls or anything like that. Like, just, don't do that. So they sit down and they're talking about, PJ and where Simon. And, she said, oh, well, he's working. And, she's like, well, she's not used to that, to the change of Simon just not being in the house anymore. She's young, she's really sensitive. And so she was asking, she's like, where's my papa? And, it's unfortunate that Portia has to, or she's not telling her essentially the truth, because her daughter's like, no, he's been gone too long. I feel like Pilar is, smart enough and old enough to handle the fact that I don't think that Simon's going to be coming back to the US, to be honest, permanently, in fact. And, Porsha and her legal team might have had a hand in that because she said that she felt like Simon would wake up every day just to like wreck her life. Like, who wants to deal with that stress? You know what I mean? Like, you have to protect your child and not put them in a situation where you're constantly stressed out and, the Simon is going out of his way to make your life miserable. So I think it worked out well for everybody. And Cynthia let her know, like, listen, sometimes, you have to just cut the cord. She said that she's been through 2 divorces as well. Porsha, we know that she was married and divorced from Cordell Stewart, and now she's married and divorced from Simon. And, that's life. You just have to sometimes move forward and do what's best. Angela said peace is a process, it's progress, and you have to continue to, actively pursue it. Like, she's talking about her getting wind that she's a bad friend, and she's like, she's just trying to be the best Porsha that she can be, but she's going through a divorce right now. And I just feel like even when she wasn't going through a divorce, Porsha wasn't a good friend to Shemea. And I also feel that if the roles were reversed, that Shemea would still be a better friend to Porsha, even if she was going through hardships and personal hardships in her life. So I don't know if Porsha, like I said, has the emotional intelligence, you know, to be the type of friend that she requires from others, that Shemea is to her. Again, I'm really glad that Cynthia brought up the example of her and Nene, because that's exactly what it reminds me of. And it's unfortunate that people who are empaths, like, they attract people who are not. Like, Shemea and Cynthia are givers, and Nene and Porsha are definitely the takers. And you have to protect your peace, because if you are, empathetic and you're an empath like that, and you come across people like that, they will drain you and take. And it's just like, no, you have to set boundaries and protect your peace, protect your heart, protect your mind, protect your soul, all of that. Protect your time. Our time is valuable. That's the one thing, that we can't get back. Money can be replaced, but time, you can never get that time back. Child, so speaking of somebody who is draining and a waste of time, Ralph is putting this girl through all kinds of just unnecessary drama. She's on the phone, Drew's on the phone with her mom while she's on the way to the lawyer's office. And, um, she's giving her advice. Her mom is almost 80 years old, and her mom is very, she's very like social media savvy. Um, but she's just really been a support for Drew, which is important. You know what I mean? Because again, when you're an empath, which like I feel like Drew is, and she's dealing with, now I do think that Ralph is a malignant narcissist. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't want to give that label to, Porsha or Nene, but Ralph, he shows all the signs. And he is really trying to be, like the sole owner of Drew Sidor LLC. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, how are you going to own somebody else's name? Like, start your own Ralph Pittman LLC. You know what I mean? Like, he's trying to take not only her finances, I feel like he's trying to take her sanity. Like, he's trying to break her spirit. He's trying to break her. And so, Drew's telling her mom that Ralph wants 40% of Drew Sidor LLC, which she started back in, 2005. That's crazy. 20 years ago, this girl started a company in her own name, and he wants almost half. For what? You didn't put in on this. Like, you didn't do anything. They have separate accounts. She's like, but she doesn't understand why he would want to drain her dry. Like, in her confessional, she keeps trying to question like why he would be doing this. And it's like this man has showed you repeatedly who he is. He's shown his character repeatedly. And it's unfortunate that they have children together because she's right. They still have to co parent their children. But, he locked her out of the house. He took access away from, like the code. And stuff like that is just it's really hard to deal with people who are that immature and that vindictive. And that's exactly who Ralph is. And I feel like the sooner that Drew wakes up to who this man truly is, the better. Because she, in my opinion, she needs to get out of there. Like, let him have the house, go stay with your mama if you have to. But, if you do have the, resources and the means, go get a condo. Like, use this Bravo check to go get a nice apartment or condo for you and your kids and get away from him. Because people like that are just mentally, physically, financially, in her case, draining. So, she asks her mom to pray, and she said that she's going to keep praying for her enemies, which I feel like her soon to be ex husband is definitely one of them. And it's unfortunate dealing with people like that. I've dealt with people like that in my life, and it is just the biggest hassle. Like, I just literally have to set boundaries and get them out of your life. Um, so speaking of, family and all that good stuff. So Angela's mom is at their house, and their house is gorgeous. Now maybe that's why she puts up with Charles and his shenanigans, because the Oakley house is, they show um, their backyard. They have a basketball court, of course, the pool and everything. But she said that she bought her mom a house in Atlanta, and she's still taking care of her. So, um, which is great. And her mom tells Angela that she wants to be self-reliant. Angela tells us in the confessional that she spent $490,000. That's almost a $500,000 on a home for her mom. And her mom doesn't want it. And I feel like, I know Angela's trying to be helpful, but I want her to start listening to what people are telling her. I feel like everybody in her family are are each saying something different, and I feel like she doesn't want to hear them. Like, she wants what she wants. Like, she wants to take care of her mom, but her mom's like, she wants to be more self-reliant. She should let her. She doesn't want her daughter doesn't want her to be a helicopter mom. Her husband, I don't know what's going on with him. He just seems checked out. But I just, I want Angela to listen to the people in their life and what they're trying to convey to her. So Kelly is teaching her oldest how to drive, which is really hilarious. I remember I had driver's ed in high school, but just driving with like family and friends and stuff like that. Um, it is a really like exhilarating experience when you learn how to drive. So Kelly, she's like, oh my gosh, and she's like screaming and scared and all that stuff. Because listen, I try to teach my younger sister how to drive, and it is really scary when your life is essentially in the hands of somebody who doesn't know, doesn't have that experience, that practice. So I feel like before Kelly took her on the roads, she should have, enrolled her in a driver's ed, but also had her practice like in a church parking lot, or, just to get comfortable with all the gears in the car and, stopping and braking and all of that good stuff. So I just feel like before you take kids on the road, that you should make sure that they are well rehearsed. Like, practice, 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 and then practice some more so that you're not freaking out and screaming like Kelly was. It was hilarious. So Drew talks about the court process, with her mom, and it is really unfortunate because, her parents had a really great relationship, but she's crying and, she's saying that her kids are acting up. And she didn't want it to affect her kids. And she's like, I don't want it to be where my kids aren't the same anymore. because they're not even listening to their grandmother. Like when you don't listen to grandma, you know there's something that it's a problem. And so her mom is telling her like, yeah, your kids have changed. They're not the same kids because they can tell. Kids pick up on that, just that energy. So I feel like maybe they should get the kids in some counseling and sit down so that they can talk with somebody, um, and just I mean, get their feelings out, get their frustrations out, so that they're not acting out and not listening to their parents or their grandparents. And speaking of lashing out, so Shemea and Porsha, they go and they have a meal together and they sit down. They both are wearing cream, which is nice. But Shemea is definitely always going to be honest. Again, that's the title of the episode. Let's be honest. And she's just trying to convey to Porsha her hurt. Like she's just trying to tell her, how she's hurt, how she doesn't feel supported. And the whole time, Porsha is like just, being so micro, like aggressive, like passive aggressive, and has all these like microaggressions, um, like she like yawns and she's like, "Oh, am I boring you?" You know what I mean? And she says that she tells Porsha that she knew about when Porsha said that they're gonna have to pay me more money for that, for them to have the same friendship on and off camera. Like stuff like that is just so unfortunate because Shemea is almost like begging this girl to salvage the friendship that they've had since they were kids. And Portia just seems so disinterested. Like she reminds me a lot of Ralph. She really does. Like she's very self-absorbed. Her face there just tells me everything. Like she just doesn't care. And I just feel like Shemea should just cut it off. Like Portia, she gets her food to go. She's like, well, and Shemea's like, am I boring you? Is this upsetting you? Are you tired? And she's young. She's like, no, it's just very uncomfortable and it's an awkward situation. But they needed to have a conversation. They're both adult women. And I feel like Portia just has a lot of growing up to do. She takes her food to leave and she's like pushing around the silverware and asks the server to wrap her food up and stuff. She's not there. She's not at a level of maturity, in my opinion, to really digest what Shemea is, telling her and to be the type of friend that Shemea is asking her to be. It's unfortunate, but they wrap up, they hug, but they get their food to go and they leave the restaurant. And I feel like, Shemea should just take it for what it is, to know that Portia, she's jealous, she's, unhappy with her own life, but she's never going to be the friend that Shemea needs her to be. So Shemea should lean on her sisters, her husband, surround herself with people who do love her and who do have her back. Because unfortunately, Portia's not there. But this was a pretty good episode. You guys let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk with you in the next one. Take care, Aces. Bye.